In 1937, a steelworker's wife in Youngstown, Ohio, could feed a family of 7 for 32 cents a day. Today, that same family would spend $93 on groceries, and half of it would spoil before the week ended. Number 8 was prescribed by doctors but disappeared when pharmaceutical companies started selling vitamins. Number 3 involves a fermentation trick that scientists are only now understanding. Hit that subscribe button because what you learn in the next 12 minutes might make you question every convenience food in your pantry. Let's count down the 10 Depression-era meals that were too smart to survive. Number 10, dandelion greens with bacon grease. This was not trendy forage salad. This was what you ate in late March when the root cellar was empty and payday was 5 days away, in coal towns of West Virginia and tenant farms of Arkansas. Women sent children into yards with buckets to pick dandelion leaves before they flowered bitter. The greens were free. They grew everywhere. She wilted them in a cast iron skillet with saved bacon grease, maybe vinegar if there was any, and salt. The leaves went from bright green to dark and glossy. The bacon fat made them rich enough to feel like a meal. What nobody knew then was that dandelion greens have more calcium than milk, more iron than spinach, and more vitamin A than carrots. They had everything a body needed to survive. One woman from Harlan County, Kentucky, remembered her mother sending her out with a pail every spring. She said they ate dandelion greens for 6 weeks straight until the garden came in. She said nobody complained because everyone knew it kept them from getting sick. Today, organic dandelion greens cost $6 a pound at Whole Foods. In 1937, they cost the effort of bending over. Number 9, flour gravy on toast. This showed up on breakfast tables across Pennsylvania steel towns and Detroit auto plant neighborhoods every Monday morning. The weekend was over. The paycheck was stretched thin. There was no bacon, no sausage, no eggs. Just flour, lard, milk if you were lucky, and salt. She heated the lard in a skillet until it shimmered, whisked in flour until it turned golden and smelled like toasted nuts, then added milk slowly while stirring so it would not lump. It thickened into a white gravy that she poured over toast. Men ate it before 12-hour shifts in factories. It was bland, it was heavy, and it kept them going until lunch. One woman from Flint, Michigan, remembered that her father never complained. He ate it. He left for the plant, and he came home too tired to talk. She said the day her mother could afford to buy eggs again. Her father cried at the breakfast table. The meal cost 7 cents and fed 4 people today. People call this poverty food and turn their noses up at it, but it kept millions of men strong enough to work shifts that would break modern people. Number 8, milk toast. This was what mothers made for sick children before antibiotics existed. It was what old people ate when their teeth gave out. It was what families ate when there was absolutely nothing else in the house. Toast, hot milk, butter if there was any, sugar if there was any. The toast soaked up the milk and turned soft. It went down easy. It stayed down when nothing else would. Doctors recommended it. Settlement house nurses taught immigrant mothers how to make it. It appeared in every community cookbook from the Grange to the church auxiliary. Nobody thought it was fancy. Nobody thought it was cuisine. It was medicine you could afford. 1 slice of bread cost 2 cents. A cup of milk cost 3 cents. That was the price of keeping someone alive when they could not eat anything else. A coal miner's daughter from Pennsylvania told an oral history project that milk toast saved her life when she had scarlet fever in 1934. She said she could not keep down solid food for 2 weeks. She said her mother made milk toast 3 times a day and spooned it into her mouth. She said years later, a doctor told her that the milk's protein and the easily digestible carbohydrates were exactly what her body needed to fight the infection. Her mother never went to medical school. She just knew. Something changed in American kitchens between 1953 and 1968. Food companies spent millions convincing mothers that cooking from scratch was old-fashioned and embarrassing. Campbell's ran magazine ads showing well-dressed suburban women opening cans while their neighbors still stood at hot stoves sweating over pots. The message was clear, and it was everywhere. Modern women used convenience foods. Only poor women or backwards women made soup from scratch. Only ignorant women still cooked like their grandmothers. Kraft introduced Velveeta and told America that cheese in a box was cleaner and safer than cheese from a deli counter. General Mills created Betty Crocker, a fictional woman who existed only to sell cake mixes and convince real women that baking from scratch was too difficult for them to manage. The USDA changed its nutrition guidelines to favor foods that could be mass-produced, shipped long distances, and sold at supermarkets. Convenience became a status symbol. Scratch cooking became a sign of poverty. A generation of knowledge disappeared in less than 15 years, not because it stopped working, but because companies needed women to buy more boxes and cans. The skills that had kept families fed through the Depression suddenly became embarrassing. Mothers stopped teaching daughters. Daughters stopped asking. And an entire system of knowledge that had taken generations to build just vanished. Number 7, potato soup with bacon ends. Every butcher shop had a barrel of bacon ends near the counter. These were the trimmed pieces too small to slice neat, too fatty to sell at regular price. They sold for 3 cents a pound because nobody wanted them except the women who knew exactly what to do with them. In Polish neighborhoods in Chicago's back of the yards and German communities in Milwaukee, grandmothers bought bacon ends on Saturday morning and made soup that lasted until Wednesday. They simmered the bacon with onions and water for hours until the fat rendered out and the meat fell apart into shreds. Then they added potatoes cut thick, sometimes a carrot if there was one, and let everything cook until the potatoes started breaking down and thickening the broth into something creamy and substantial. The soup was smoky, salty, filling enough to keep factory workers going through double shifts. It cost 11 cents to make a pot that fed 6 people for 2 days. The bacon ends are still available at butcher shops. They just cost $8 a pound now because chefs discovered them. Number 6, fried cornmeal mush. In the Pennsylvania coal regions and the mill towns of the Midwest, women made cornmeal mush at night, poured it into loaf pans, and left it in the icebox to set up firm. In the morning, she sliced it thick like bread and fried it in whatever fat she had saved. Bacon, grease, lard, even the drippings from Sunday's chicken if there had been a chicken. The slices hit the hot cast iron skillet and the edges crisped up golden and lacy while the centers stayed soft and creamy. Men ate it with sorghum syrup when there was any, or Caro corn syrup, or just salt and pepper. It cost 4 cents to feed a family breakfast for 3 days. The cornmeal lasted forever in the pantry. It never spoiled. You could buy a 5-pound sack for 19 cents in 1936, and it would make 20 breakfasts. A steelworker's son from Gary, Indiana, remembered his mother frying mush every morning for 6 years. He said the smell of it still makes him think of his father getting ready for the mills. He said they ate it until his father got promoted to foreman, and his mother bought a box of cornflakes to celebrate. He said the cornflakes cost more than a week of cornmeal mush and tasted like cardboard. Today, organic polenta costs $7 a pound and comes in a tube. It is the exact same thing his mother made for pennies. Number 5. Navy beans with ham hock. By 1935, a pound of navy beans cost 6 cents. A ham hock cost 8 cents. Together they made a pot of soup that fed 8 people for 2 days. This was not fancy food. This was fuel, the beans soaked overnight in cold water. In the morning, she put them in a pot with the ham hock, an onion, water, and nothing else. It simmered for 4 hours on the back of the stove. The ham hock gave up its flavor and collagen. The beans broke down and thickened the liquid by afternoon. The soup was creamy and smoky and dense enough to coat a spoon. She served it with cornbread if there was cornmeal, or just saltine crackers. The ham hock got passed around the table and everyone took a bite of meat off the bone. Then the bone went back in the pot for tomorrow. Nothing wasted. A sharecropper's daughter from Mississippi said her mother made this soup every Monday for as long as she could remember. She said they ate it Monday and Tuesday and sometimes Wednesday if the pot was big enough. She said she hated it as a child, but when she had her own children during hard times, it was the first thing she made. She said she finally understood why her mother never changed the recipe. It worked. Number 4, cabbage fried in butter. Jewish grandmothers in New York tenements made this. Irish mothers in Boston triple-deckers made this. German families in Cincinnati made this. A head of cabbage cost 5 cents and weighed 3 pounds. That was 15 meals for a nickel if you knew how to stretch it. She cut the cabbage thin with a knife so sharp it could split a hair. She heated butter or schmaltz in a big cast iron skillet and let the cabbage cook slow until the edges turned brown and started to caramelize. The cabbage got sweet, the butter got nutty, the whole kitchen filled with a smell that made your mouth water even if you had already eaten. She added caraway seeds if she had them, pepper if she did not. That was dinner with boiled potatoes or rye bread. It filled you up. It cost almost nothing. Cabbage does not spoil fast. You could keep a head in the icebox for 2 weeks and it just got a little softer. One woman from the Bronx told a WPA interviewer in 1938 that her mother made fried cabbage every Monday and Thursday for 6 years during the Depression. She said she still cannot smell caramelized cabbage without thinking about her father coming home from the garment factory with his hands stained blue from dye and her mother putting a plate of cabbage in front of him. She said he always said the same thing. He said it tasted like home. Number 3, Sauerkraut. German and Polish families made sauerkraut in crocks every fall when cabbage was cheap and plentiful. A head of cabbage cost 5 cents. Salt cost a penny. Together, they made a gallon of sauerkraut that lasted all winter in the basement and never spoiled. She shredded the cabbage thin with a special grater that had 3 blades. She packed it into a ceramic crock in layers with salt, pressing down hard to get the water out. She weighted it down with a plate and a clean rock and covered the whole thing with a cloth. It sat in the basement for 6 weeks. The cabbage fermented. It turned sour and tangy and deeply flavorful. It did not spoil. It did not rot. The fermentation preserved it and made it more nutritious than raw cabbage ever was. Families ate it with pork, with potatoes, with beans, with everything. It gave them vitamin C through the winter when there were no fresh vegetables and scurvy was killing people who did not know any better. One woman from a Pennsylvania mining town said her grandmother made sauerkraut every year in a crock so big it took 2 men to lift. She said the whole house smelled like fermentation for weeks and everyone complained. But come January, when people were getting sick, her family stayed healthy. The knowledge was in the food. The thing about these meals that nobody wants to admit is that the science was right all along. In 2017, researchers at Harvard published findings on bone broth collagen and called it a breakthrough in joint health and gut repair. Pennsylvania Dutch grandmothers had been making bone broth since the 1880s and giving it to sick children because they knew it worked. In 2019, microbiologists at Cornell studied lactofermentation in vegetable preservation and declared it revolutionary for probiotics and shelf life. Eastern European immigrants had been fermenting cabbage and cucumbers in crocks for 200 years. They did not know the word probiotic, but they knew fermented vegetables kept them from getting sick. Food scientists at UC Berkeley spent 5 years analyzing the nutrient density of organ meats and concluded they were among the most nutritionally complete foods available. Then they looked at the price. Grass-fed beef liver costs $18 a pound at Whole Foods. In 1938, liver cost 4 cents a pound, and butchers practically gave it away. The wellness industry took Depression-era survival knowledge, repackaged it with fancy labels and Instagram photos, and sold it back to Americans at a markup so high it should be criminal. Number 2, lard sandwiches. This is the one that horrifies modern people the most. White bread spread with lard and sprinkled with salt, sometimes sugar instead of salt. That was breakfast or lunch for millions of children in coal towns and farm communities across America. Lard was cheap. Bread was cheap. Together they gave children enough calories to walk 3 miles to school and sit through lessons without fainting from hunger. Was it nutritious by modern standards? Not particularly. Did it keep children from starving? Yes, and that was the point. One man from a West Virginia coal camp remembered taking lard and sugar sandwiches to school in a tin pail every day for 3 years during the Depression. He said the other kids had the same thing. He said nobody made fun of anyone because everyone was eating the same food and everyone understood. He said the day his father got his job back at the mine, his mother made him an egg sandwich for school, and he cried because he knew things were getting better. He said he never forgot what lard sandwiches meant. They meant survival. He said his mother was doing everything she could to keep him alive. He said people today who turn their noses up at foods like that do not understand what it means to be truly hungry. Number 1, water gravy, just flour. Lard, salt, and water? No milk, no meat, nothing else. It sounds like nothing because it was nothing, but it kept children alive when there was absolutely nothing else in the house and payday was still 2 days away. She heated the lard in a skillet until it was just starting to smoke. She whisked in the flour and let it brown, stirring constantly so it would not burn. It smelled like toasted nuts. Then she added water slowly, whisking hard so it would not lump. It thickened into a beige gravy that was bland and heavy and barely tasted like food. She poured it over biscuits, if there were biscuits, or just bread, or sometimes people ate it with a spoon straight from the bowl. It was the bottom, the thing you made when everything else had failed, and knowing it existed meant nobody had to starve. Knowing you could make something that would fill a stomach from flour and water and fat meant there was always one more meal possible. It meant giving up was not an option. These were not poor people's meals. These were smart people's meals during poor times. There is a difference that matters. The women who cooked like this understood nutrition, chemistry, economics, and preservation better than most modern chefs with culinary degrees. They just did not get to write cookbooks or open restaurants or charge $40 a plate for their knowledge. They kept families alive on pennies. They wasted nothing. They transformed scraps and cast-offs into nutrition that sustained millions through the worst economic disaster in American history. That knowledge is worth more than any convenience food will ever be worth. This week, make one meal from this list using ingredients that cost less than $5. See if you can feed your family on what your great-grandmother spent. Drop in the comments which one you will try first, or which one your grandmother made that I missed. I want to hear your family's version. The cost of forgetting this knowledge is measured in money, in health, and in the loss of wisdom that kept millions alive. The cost of remembering is just paying attention.